All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to crack one of the toughest cases for any data analyst, figuring out which statistical test to use. I know it seems complicated, but I promise, by the end of this, you'll see it's really just a logical investigation, step by step.
Yeah, look at this thing. If you've ever seen a chart like this, you know that feeling, right? It looks like some kind of crazy subway map that's designed to get you lost. All these names and lines, it's enough to make your head spin.
But here's the thing. That's exactly what it is. It's a map. And today, we're going to become data detectives. I'm going to show you how to follow the clues hidden inside your data, leading you straight to the right tool for the job.
So here's our game plan. We'll start at what I call the statistical crossroads to get our bearings. Then we'll gather 3 key clues: your variable type, whether your data needs to follow certain rules, and just how many samples you're dealing with. Once we have all the evidence, we'll crack the case and build your very own analyst toolkit.
Every single analysis starts right here. And the secret isn't about memorizing 100 different tests. No way. It's all about learning to ask a few simple, structured questions that will guide you down the right path, every single time. Okay, clue number 1. And honestly, this is the big one. It's the most important first step. You have to understand the fundamental nature of the data you're working with. Getting this right immediately narrows down your choices in a huge way. So you've got 2 main suspects here. On one side, we have continuous variables. Think about things you can measure precisely: height, weight, temperature, you name it. The key is that the gap between 5 feet and 6 feet is the exact same as the gap between 6 feet and 7 feet. On the other side, we have ordinal variables. This is all about ranking: good, better, best. You know that best is more than better, but by how much exactly? You can't really say. That difference is absolutely crucial. All right, on to clue number 2. Now that we know what kind of data we have, we hit a fork in the road, and we have to ask a new question. Does our data play by a certain set of rules? This is the choice between parametric and non-parametric tests. Think of parametric tests as the high-precision power tools in your workshop. They're incredibly powerful, they're super accurate, but, and this is a big but, they only work under very specific conditions. The main one is that your data has to follow a normal distribution, that classic bell curve shape we've all seen.
But what happens when your data is a little wild? When it doesn't fit that perfect, neat bell curve? Well, that's where non-parametric tests save the day. These are the rugged, all-terrain vehicles of statistics. They're flexible, they're robust, and they don't really care what shape your data is in.
And this is where things get kind of funny. A little bit of a paradox, really. You want to use one of those powerful parametric tests, right? Well, to do that, you first have to check if your data is normal. And how do you check that? You guessed it, you often use a non-parametric test to find out. It's a perfect little example of how these 2 types of tests actually work together.
Okay, detective, on to our 3rd and final clue. And trust me, this one's the easiest of them all. It's literally just about counting how many groups, or samples, you're looking to compare in your investigation. The simplest case, you've got just one group. This is a one-sample test. You're basically comparing your group's performance against some known benchmark, like seeing how your class's average score stacks up against the national average. Now, what's probably more common is when you're comparing 2 different groups directly to each other. But hang on, there's one more little detail we need to figure out here. And that detail is, are those 2 groups totally separate, or are they related somehow? If they're completely unrelated, like comparing students from 2 different schools, we call those independent samples. But if they're connected, like testing the same group of patients before and after a treatment, we call those dependent or paired samples. And finally, what if you've gotten more than 2 groups? Say 3, 4, or even more? Well, we call that a K-sample test, where K just means, some number of groups. This is what you'd use if you wanted to compare the results from 3 different marketing campaigns all at once. Okay, let's pause for a second. We've gathered our 3 clues: the variable type, the assumptions, and how many samples we've got. With all this evidence in hand, it's time to follow the map, crack the case, and find our test. So let's walk through a real-world example. Imagine we're comparing test scores, which, remember, is continuous data from 2 totally separate student groups. We've got 2 of our 3 clues. So, what's the last question we need to ask before we choose our test? And boom, here's the payoff. This is where all that detective work comes together. We check if our data is normally distributed. If it is, we pull out the independent t-test. If it's not, no problem. We just pivot to its non-parametric buddy, the Wilcoxon-Rank sum test. See how that works? The clues point you right to the answer.
And you know what? The same exact logic applies even if we throw a third classroom into the mix. We've still got continuous data, but now it's a case sample situation. So we ask our final question: is the data normal? If the answer is yes, we use ANOVA. If it's no, we use the Kruskal-Wallis test. It's the same simple, logical process every time.
So let's wrap all of this up into a handy little toolkit that you can use for pretty much any data investigation you're going to face from here on out. Really, it all just boils down to these three simple questions. 1. What kind of variable am I dealing with? 2. Can my data play by the parametric rules? And 3. How many groups am I comparing? If you can answer these three, you got this. And if you take away only one thing from this, please let it be this. Always, always check your assumptions before you commit to a parametric test. Seriously, it's that one extra step that separates a decent analysis from a truly insightful and trustworthy one. Because at the end of the day, this whole thing isn't just about crunching numbers. It's about having a conversation with your data. And the real goal isn't just to find an answer. It's to make sure you're asking your data the right questions in the first place. So next time you've got a data set in front of you, what questions will you ask?